Marcus Kim has always possessed an investigative instinct that served him well as a gallery director. While other representatives rely on artists' marketing departments for information, Marcus digs deeper, uncovering the stories behind the stories that help him negotiate better deals for his clients. Tonight, that instinct is screaming warnings about the Park family. Before we dive in, beautiful people, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe. It's the best way you can support us as we continue delivering captivating stories that'll keep you hooked every single day. He sits in his Upper West Side office at midnight, surrounded by printouts of Korean business articles, financial reports, and social media posts that paint a complex picture of Jae-won's world. The official narrative is pristine. Successful heir, devoted son, philanthropic businessman. But Marcus has learned to look for gaps in perfect stories, and the Park family history has several. The most significant gap is 8 years old and named Han Ji-hoon. Jae-won's younger brother appears in family photos until 2017, then vanishes completely from public records. The official story is simple. Tragic car accident, private funeral, family grief. But Marcus's journalist contacts in Seoul tell a different story, whispers of a suicide, a forbidden relationship, and a family cover-up that reached the highest levels of Korean society. His phone buzzes with a text from Destiny. Dinner tomorrow. Need to talk. Marcus responds immediately. My place 7 p.m. I'm cooking. What he doesn't text is the growing certainty that Destiny is walking into emotional quicksand, and that Grace Park has already begun constructing traps that could destroy both her friend's heart and her career. Meanwhile, across town in the Park penthouse, Jae-won stands on his terrace overlooking Central Park, his phone pressed to his ear as he speaks to Minji in Seoul. She's planning something, he says quietly. My mother doesn't fly internationally for casual conversations. She came here to end this relationship, and since her initial approach with Destiny clearly failed, she'll escalate. What do you want me to do? Minji asks. Find out what she's really afraid of. This isn't just about family reputation or business concerns. There's something else, something that makes the thought of me being happy with Destiny genuinely terrifying to her. Minji is quiet for a moment. When he speaks again, his voice is careful. Jae-won, you need to consider the possibility that your mother isn't the villain in this situation. Maybe she knows something about love and loss that you don't. Such as what happened to Ji-hoon. The name hits Jae-won like a physical blow. His younger brother, dead at 25, officially a victim of tragic circumstances, but privately a cautionary tale that Grace has never stopped telling. Ji-hoon loved recklessly, chose passion over duty, and paid the ultimate price for defying family expectations. That was different, Jae-won says finally. Was it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like history trying to repeat itself. The heir to Park Global falls in love with someone the family deems unsuitable, and Grace Park moves heaven and earth to prevent a tragedy she believes she's already witnessed once. Jae-won closes his eyes, remembering Ji-hoon's infectious laugh, his younger brother's absolute faith in happy endings, the way Ji-hoon had defied their mother's warnings right up until the night he drove his car off a bridge in Busan. Destiny isn't going to destroy herself for love, he says firmly. But would you? The question hangs in the night air, unanswered and dangerous. Because Jae-won knows the truth that Minji is too loyal to voice directly. Yes, he would risk everything for Destiny Crawford, his business empire, his family legacy, his carefully constructed life. All of it feels negotiable in the face of what he felt when she smiled at him across that restaurant table. And that, more than any media scandal or cultural clash, is exactly what Grace Park fears most. In her own penthouse bedroom, Grace sits at her antique writing desk, composing an email to her head of security in Seoul. The message is brief and coded, but its meaning is clear. Activate every resource, investigate every connection, find the leverage that will make Destiny Crawford walk away voluntarily. She's not being cruel, she tells herself. She's being practical. Love is a beautiful luxury that people like Jae-won cannot afford. And if Destiny truly cares for him, she'll eventually understand that some sacrifices are necessary to protect the people we love most. Grace has made such sacrifices herself. The photo on her desk shows her 3 decades younger, standing beside a handsome man who isn't her late husband. The man in the photo has kind eyes and calloused hands, and if circumstances had been different, if family expectations and social pressures hadn't intervened, He might have been Jae-won's father instead of the cold, strategic marriage that actually produced her children. She touches the glass gently, remembering the choice she made between love and duty, between personal happiness and family legacy, the choice that gave her 2 sons and a business empire but left her heart permanently scarred. "I won't let you make my mistakes," she whispers to the empty room, though she's not certain whether she's addressing Jae-won or Destiny. But some mistakes she'll learn are worth making. And some love stories are strong enough to survive even the most painful family secrets. The private dining room at Le Bernardin feels like a confessional as Destiny picks at her perfectly prepared halibut and watches Marcus scroll through the disturbing results of his unofficial investigation into the Park family. The restaurant's hushed elegance provides privacy for conversations that could reshape lives, and tonight both of them sense they're standing at a crossroads. "I need you to promise me something," Marcus says without preamble. "Promise me you'll listen to all of this before you react." That sounds ominous. It is. Marcus slides a folder across the white tablecloth. Ji-hoon Park died 8 years ago, officially in a car accident. But 3 sources in Seoul, journalists who covered the story, all say the same thing. The accident scene was inconsistent with the police report. Destiny opens the folder with trembling fingers. Inside are copies of Korean newspaper articles, their Hangul text accompanied by rough translations Marcus has commissioned. The photos show a mangled luxury sedan at the bottom of a ravine, but the accompanying text raises questions about the trajectory, the timing and the absence of skid marks that would indicate an attempt to brake. "Suicide?" Destiny asks quietly. "That's what people whispered, but here's where it gets complicated. Ji-hoon wasn't alone in that car." Marcus pulls out another document. There was a woman with him, 23 years old, art student at Seoul National University named Lee So-jin. Destiny's blood chills. They both died. No, that's the strange part. She survived barely. Spent 4 months in a coma, another year in rehabilitation. But after she recovered, she disappeared completely. No graduation records, no employment history, no social media presence. It's like she ceased to exist. "People don't just vanish," Destiny objects. "They do if someone with enough money and influence wants them to." Marcus's expression is grim. "I found one more thing. A transfer of 60 million won to a bank account registered under Lee So-jin's name, dated 3 weeks after the accident, the same day she was discharged from the hospital. The implication hangs between them like poison. Grace Park paid the survivor to disappear, to maintain whatever fiction protected the family's reputation and prevented difficult questions about Ji-hoon's death." "Marcus," Destiny says slowly, "why are you telling me this?" "Because Grace Park has already started investigating you. My contacts in the art world say private investigators have been asking questions about your finances, your past relationships, your family history. She's building a file on you, Destiny, and based on what she did to So-jin, I don't think she'll stop at paying you to leave quietly." Destiny pushes her plate away, her appetite completely gone. The thought of professional investigators digging through her life feels violating, but the comparison to So-jin is terrifying. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that Grace Park is a woman who will eliminate anyone who threatens her family's image. Ji-hoon fell in love with someone she deemed unsuitable, and when he refused to end the relationship, they both ended up dead or disappeared. Now Jae-won is following the same pattern. You think she would actually hurt me? I think she would do whatever necessary to protect her surviving son, and that whatever necessary might include things you can't imagine." Marcus reaches across the table to squeeze Destiny's hand. "I also think you're falling in love with Jae-won so fast that you're not thinking clearly about the risks." The words hit home because they're true. 3 days ago, Destiny had never heard of Park Jae-won. Now the thought of losing him creates a physical ache in her chest that feels dangerously close to desperation. "What would you do?" Destiny asks. "If you were me?" Marcus considers the question seriously. "If I thought the man was worth it, if I believed the connection was real and worth fighting for, I'd gather ammunition of my own. Grace Park's power comes from information asymmetry. She knows everything about you while you know nothing about her secrets. Level the playing field." "How?" "Find So-jin. Find out what really happened 8 years ago and why Grace was willing to pay millions to keep it quiet. If you're going to war with the Park family, you need to understand exactly what they're capable of and what they're most afraid of losing." Destiny stares out the restaurant's windows at the Manhattan street scene, watching ordinary people live ordinary lives, unburdened by the complexities of international romance and family vendettas. Part of her envies them, their simplicity, their freedom to love without calculating corporate consequences and media scandals. But a larger part of her recognizes that she's already chosen her path. Jae-won has awakened something in her that she'd thought was permanently damaged by Cameron's betrayal, the capacity to risk everything for connection. And if Grace Park wants to make that love a battle, then Destiny will learn to fight with the same ruthless intelligence that has made the Park family empire possible. "Help me find her," Destiny says finally. Marcus nods, unsurprised by her friend's decision. "I've already started." But neither of them knows that at this very moment, Jae-won is making his own dangerous choice, one that will accelerate Grace's timeline and force all their secrets into the light. Jae-won makes his decision while standing in his mother's Manhattan penthouse at dawn, watching her methodically review financial reports as if the previous day's emotional confrontations were merely minor inconveniences to be managed. Her composure in the face of his obvious turmoil finally breaks something inside him. Not his love for her, but his willingness to subordinate his happiness to her fears. "Mother," he says quietly, "I'm going to see Destiny today and I'm going to ask her to dinner tomorrow night, publicly at Jean Georges, where we'll certainly be photographed." Grace doesn't look up from her papers. "That would be inadvisable." "I'm not asking for advice. I'm informing you of my decision." Now she raises her eyes and the calculation in them chills him. "Jae-won, you're allowing emotion to cloud your judgment. This woman is a distraction you cannot afford. This woman is the first person in 8 years who has made me want to be alive," he says with quiet intensity. "Since Ji-hoon died, I've been functioning through my life, doing what's expected, meeting every obligation and feeling absolutely nothing. Destiny changed that in 30 minutes. At the mention of Ji-hoon's name, Grace's mask slips momentarily, revealing something raw and desperate. "Your brother made similar declarations about love conquering all obstacles. Do you remember how that ended? Ji-hoon made different choices. Ji-hoon defied family expectations for a woman who wasn't worth his sacrifice, just as you're doing now." The cruelty of reducing Ji-hoon's death to a cautionary tale about inconvenient love makes Jae-won's chest burn with fury. "Don't use his memory as a weapon against my happiness." "I'm using his memory to save your life." Grace's composure finally cracks, revealing the terror she's been concealing. "Do you think I enjoyed burying one son? Do you think I can survive burying another?" The admission hangs between them, raw and devastating. For the first time, Jae-won sees past his mother's strategic maneuvering to the grief-stricken parent underneath. A woman so traumatized by loss that she's willing to sacrifice his happiness to prevent what she perceives as inevitable tragedy. "Mother," he says gently, "I'm not Ji-hoon and Destiny isn't So-jin." Grace goes completely still. "How do you know about So-jin?" "I know enough. I know you paid her to disappear after the accident. I know you've been investigating Destiny the same way you investigated Ji-hoon's girlfriend. And I know you're prepared to destroy anyone who threatens your control over this family." "I protected this family," Grace says fiercely. "I protected you from the scandal that would have destroyed everything we've built. So-jin was a liability, unstable, traumatized, potentially willing to say anything for money or attention. I solved the problem quietly. You silenced a traumatized woman who'd lost the man she loved. I prevented her from taking you down with her grief." Grace rises from her chair, every inch the corporate warrior she's been for 3 decades. "Joan, you can hate me for the choices I've made, but you cannot ignore their necessity. Park Global supports 50,000 employees and their families. Our family name opens doors throughout Asia that create opportunities for countless people. Your personal happiness, while important to me as your mother, cannot take precedence over those responsibilities. And if I choose Destiny anyway?" Grace's smile is sharp with certainty. "Then you'll discover that Miss Crawford isn't as committed to this romance as you believe. People have limits, son, even people who love you." The threat is clear, though wrapped in maternal concern. Grace will make loving him so painful for Destiny that she'll eventually walk away to protect herself. The strategy that worked with So-jin will be refined and applied with surgical precision. Jae-won moves toward the door, then pauses. "Mother, I want you to understand something. If you hurt Destiny, if you drive her away through manipulation or threats or any of the tactics you've perfected over the years, you will lose me permanently. Not just my obedience or my cooperation, but my presence in your life entirely. You don't mean that. I've never meant anything more. His voice carries absolute conviction. I spent 8 years drowning in guilt over Ji-hoon's death, convinced that if I'd been a better brother, a more supportive family member, maybe he'd still be alive. But I realize now that Ji-hoon didn't die because he loved the wrong person. He died because he felt trapped between love and duty and saw no way to honor both. Grace's face is pale, but her expression remains defiant. I refuse to be trapped the same way, Jae-won continues. So choose carefully, mother. You can have a son who loves Destiny Crawford and still respects his family obligations, or you can have no son at all. He leaves Grace standing alone in her perfectly appointed penthouse, surrounded by the symbols of power and success that have been her consolation for every personal sacrifice she's made. For the first time in decades, she wonders if the price of protecting her family has been the destruction of everything she was trying to preserve. But Grace Park didn't build an empire by surrendering at the first sign of opposition. And some battles, she knows, are won not through direct confrontation but by forcing the enemy to defeat themselves. Marcus spends the next 3 days becoming an expert on Korean immigrant communities in New York. He interviews shop owners in Flushing, attends Korean-language church services, and speaks with everyone who might remember a traumatized young woman who arrived from Seoul 8 years ago with enough money to disappear but not enough happiness to make that disappearance peaceful. The break comes from an unexpected source. A seamstress in the Queens Garment District remembers a woman named Young-hee who worked quietly in the back of the shop for 6 years before suddenly leaving 3 months ago. The description matches Sojin's age and background, and when Marcus shows her a photo from the accident coverage, the seamstress's eyes widen with recognition. Young-hee, she confirms in broken English. Very sad woman. Good worker but like ghost. Always afraid. Do you know where she went? The seamstress hesitates, then writes an address on a scrap of paper. She moved here. Small apartment. Very cheap. But maybe she not want visitors. Marcus texts Destiny immediately. Found her. Queens. Tomorrow morning 5:30 a.m. Can you come? Destiny doesn't hesitate. I'll be there. But what neither of them knows is that Grace's security team has been monitoring Marcus's movements since the moment he started asking questions about Ji-hoon. They know exactly where he's going and exactly what he's about to discover. And Grace Park has made a decision about how far she's willing to go to protect her family's secrets. The alarm goes off at 4:30 in the morning, jarring Marcus from restless sleep. He dresses quickly in the dark, checking his phone for any updates from his Korean contacts. Nothing new, just the address in Queens and the hope that Sojin will be willing to talk after 8 years of silence. He doesn't leave a note for anyone. Doesn't tell Destiny the exact address yet, planning to confirm Sojin's presence first before bringing her friend into what might be a dangerous or emotionally volatile situation. He's being careful, protective, doing what he's always done, shielding the people he cares about from unnecessary risk. It's the last decision he'll remember making. The drive to Queens is quiet. The city still sleeping as he navigates familiar streets that gradually give way to industrial neighborhoods and immigrant communities that most Manhattanites never see. The address leads him to a converted warehouse building, cheap housing for workers who can't afford better. He parks on the street, noting the early morning delivery trucks already moving through the area. Nothing seems unusual or threatening. Just another day in a working-class neighborhood where people rise before dawn to earn their living. Marcus is checking the apartment numbers when the delivery truck runs the red light. He doesn't see it coming. One moment he's walking across the intersection, and the next there's an explosion of metal and noise and pain that obliterates everything else. The impact throws him 15 feet. He lands hard, and the world becomes a confusion of sirens and voices and darkness that keeps trying to pull him under. Someone is screaming. He thinks it might be him. The last thing he sees before consciousness fades is a black sedan parked down the street. Engine running, watching. Destiny's phone rings at 6 in the morning with a call that will change everything. The voice on the other end is professional, courteous, and devastating. Ms. Crawford, this is Dr. Lisa Chun from Mount Sinai Hospital. We have you listed as the emergency contact for Marcus Kim. I'm afraid there's been an accident. The subway ride to the hospital passes in a blur of fluorescent tunnel lights and strangers' faces that swim in and out of focus as Destiny struggles to process the paramedics' preliminary report. Marcus's car collided with a delivery truck at 5:30 in the morning in Queens, far from his usual Manhattan routes, under circumstances that make no immediate sense. Jae-won meets her in the hospital waiting room, having received her frantic call while he was preparing for an early morning board meeting. He takes one look at her stricken face and pulls her into his arms without hesitation, ignoring the stares of other visitors who recognize him from yesterday's gossip column photos. "How is he?" he asks quietly. "Stable but unconscious. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding, possible brain trauma." Destiny's voice is steady, but her hands shake against his chest. "The police want to talk to me about why he was in Queens at dawn. Do you know?" Destiny pulls back to meet his eyes, and the fear in her expression makes his stomach drop. "He found her, Jae-won. He found Sojin. She's been living in Queens under a different name, working as a seamstress in a Korean garment district. Marcus was going to meet her this morning to ask about the accident, about your mother's payment, about what really happened 8 years ago." Jae-won's blood turns to ice. "Where is Sojin now?" "Missing. Her landlord says she left during the night with a single suitcase. No forwarding address, no explanation." Destiny's voice drops to a whisper. "Jae-won, this wasn't an accident. Someone wanted to prevent Marcus from talking to Sojin, and they were willing to hurt him to make it happen." The implications crash over him like a tidal wave: his mother's quiet efficiency, her absolute certainty that problems can be managed, her network of security personnel and private contractors who ask no questions about their assignments. "I have to go," he says suddenly. "Where?" "To confront my mother, to end this before anyone else gets hurt." Destiny catches his arm as he turns to leave. "Jae-won, wait. If Grace is responsible for this, if she's willing to hurt innocent people to protect her secrets, then confronting her directly puts you at risk too. I can't let her think that threatening the people I care about is an acceptable strategy." "Then don't go alone." They stare at each other across the sterile hospital waiting room. Two people who've known each other for 4 days but who have already become essential to each other's emotional survival. The connection that felt like destiny now feels like a liability, making them both vulnerable to a woman who views love as the enemy of family loyalty. "Destiny," he says carefully, "I need you to consider the possibility that being with me will continue to put you and the people you love in danger. If my mother is willing to orchestrate Marcus's accident to prevent unwanted revelations, what else might she be willing to do? Are you asking me to walk away? I'm asking if you're strong enough to stay." The question hangs between them like a challenge and a plea, because Jae-won knows that loving him means entering a war zone where the casualties include anyone who gets too close to family secrets that have been buried for 8 years. Destiny thinks about Marcus lying unconscious 3 floors above them, about Sojin disappearing into the night, about the photos and investigations and threats that have already begun to reshape her quiet artistic life into something resembling a corporate thriller. She thinks about Cameron's betrayal 3 years ago and her hard-won independence, about the security she's built through her own success and the privacy she's carefully maintained. All of it feels fragile now, vulnerable to forces she's only beginning to understand. But she also thinks about the way Jae-won looked at her across that restaurant table, the recognition in his eyes that matched something deep in her soul, the feeling that she'd been unconsciously searching for him her entire life without knowing it. "I'm strong enough," she says firmly. "But I'm not foolish enough to fight Grace Park without ammunition." Jae-won's expression shifts from worry to something resembling admiration as he realizes that the woman he's falling in love with is preparing for war. The ICU waiting room becomes their war council. While Marcus remains unconscious, monitored by machines that beep with mechanical regularity, Destiny and Jae-won forge a partnership that will either save their relationship or destroy them both. Minji arrives within the hour, his usually composed demeanor shaken by the news of Marcus's accident. He brings a thick envelope, financial records, security footage from the garment district, and a series of wire transfers that paint a disturbing picture of Grace's methods. "She's been monitoring both of you since the museum gala," he reports quietly, glancing around to ensure they're not overheard. "Tracking your movements, your communications, your schedules." Marcus's investigation into Sojin triggered an immediate response. What kind of response? Destiny asks, though she dreads the answer. Minji opens the envelope and spreads photographs across the small table. They show Marcus's car at various locations throughout the week, outside Destiny's loft, parked near the library where he'd been researching Korean business records, stopped at the diner where he'd met with his journalist contacts. Your friend was more thorough than Grace anticipated, he continues. He found not just Sojin's current identity, but also her medical records from after the accident. Marcus discovered something that Grace thought was buried forever. Jae-won leans forward. What? Sojin was pregnant when the accident happened. She lost the baby in the crash. The revelation hits like a physical blow. Destiny's hand flies to her mouth while Jae-won goes completely pale. The tragedy becomes exponentially more complex, not just the death of his brother and the silencing of a witness, but the loss of a child who would have been Grace's grandchild. My God, Jae-won whispers. Ji-hoon was going to be a father. Grace knew, Mindy says grimly. The medical records show she was listed as the emergency contact after Sojin's family disowned her for the pregnancy. Grace made every decision about Sojin's medical care while she was in the coma, including the authorization for the surgery that saved her life. So she wasn't just covering up a scandal, Destiny realizes. She was covering up the death of her own grandchild. A grandchild who would have legitimized Ji-hoon's relationship with Sojin, who would have made it impossible for Grace to dismiss their love as a youthful mistake. Jae-won's voice carries the weight of profound betrayal. She paid Sojin to disappear because dead babies tell no tales about family legacies. The cruelty of it, using money to silence a grieving mother, erasing not just a relationship but an entire lineage, makes them all sit in stunned silence. Grace's actions weren't just about protecting her family's reputation, they were about rewriting history to match her preferred narrative. Where did Marcus get the medical records? Destiny asks. A nurse who was on duty during Sojin's hospitalization. She kept copies because she suspected something wasn't right about the family's behavior. She never spoke up at the time. Grace can be very persuasive and the nurse needed her job. But when Marcus started asking questions, she decided it was time for the truth. And now? Jae-won asks, though he suspects he knows the answer. Minji's expression darkens. The nurse called in sick this morning and hasn't been seen since. Her apartment appears to have been vacated in a hurry. Another disappearance. Another witness silenced. Grace's efficiency in eliminating problems is becoming clear. She doesn't just buy silence, she orchestrates complete erasure of inconvenient truths. We need to find Sojin, Destiny says. She's the only person who can verify what really happened, and she's running out of places to hide. Assuming she's willing to talk, Jae-won points out. Grace has been supporting her for 8 years. That kind of financial dependency creates complicated loyalties. Or complicated resentments, Destiny counters. A woman who's been paid to forget her dead child and disappear from her life might be ready to tell the truth, especially if she realizes that staying quiet puts other people in danger. Minji considers this. I might be able to help. My firm handles immigration cases and Sojin's legal status has always been precarious. If Grace's payment stopped suddenly, which it would if she felt threatened, Sojin might be desperate enough to accept protection in exchange for testimony. That's assuming we can find her before Grace does, Jae-won says. We have one advantage, Destiny points out. Grace doesn't know that we know about the pregnancy. She thinks the only thread is Sojin talking about the accident itself, not about what she lost in it. It's a slim advantage, but it's something. They spend the next hour developing a plan that feels both desperate and necessary, tracking down a traumatized woman who's been hiding for 8 years, convincing her to risk everything by going public with a story that could destroy one of Korea's most powerful families, all while staying ahead of Grace's security network and private investigators. When visiting hours begin, they take turns sitting with Marcus, who remains unconscious but stable. Destiny holds her friend's hand and whispers promises about finding the truth, about making sure his sacrifice wasn't in vain. Jae-won watches from the doorway, seeing the fierce loyalty that drives the woman he's falling in love with. Destiny Crawford isn't just beautiful and talented, she's someone who fights for the people she cares about, even when it puts her own safety at risk. He's going to wake up asking about the story, Destiny says when she rejoins him in the corridor. Marcus doesn't give up on anything, especially when it involves protecting someone he loves. Like you, Jae-won observes. Like us, she corrects. Because whether your mother likes it or not, we're in this together now. But as they leave the hospital, neither notices the black sedan that pulls away from the parking garage behind them, or the driver speaking rapidly in Korean into his phone, reporting their every movement to Grace Park. And in her penthouse office, Grace listens to the report with growing concern. Her son isn't backing down. Destiny Crawford isn't frightened away. And somewhere in New York, Sojin is preparing to surface with a story that could destroy everything Grace has worked 3 decades to build. Some battles require new strategies. Some wars demand casualties that even Grace Park hasn't been willing to accept before. But when family legacy collides with forbidden truth, someone always pays the price. And Grace is about to decide who that someone will be. If you're captivated by this unfolding drama, hit subscribe and the notification bell. Because in episode 3, the hunt for Sojin intensifies, and the secrets she's been carrying will finally come to light. When a mother's love becomes a weapon, and the past refuses to stay buried, no one is safe. Don't miss what happens next. The truth is more devastating than anyone imagined. If you enjoyed this story, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, beautiful people. See you in the next one.